You know, I've been coming in for 6 years, and 6 years you've been sticking it to me. I want to know how come.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I want to know how come.
You want to know?
I want to know how.
Okay, I'm going to tell you.
Welcome back to another episode of Growing Up Punk, the podcast about punk rock and all of its friends. We are so glad to have you. We hope you guys and gals are staying safe out there, but still hopefully are having some opportunities to enjoy the summer heat. It doesn't last very long, at least where we are, and so hope you guys are having an awesome summer. So thanks for taking the time to check out another episode today. We've got an awesome interview today with a guy named Ethan Luck, and I'll share a bit more about what we got to talk with him about in a few minutes. But first of all, if you are new to the show, please go check us out on our social media platforms. You can check us out on Instagram and Twitter at Growing Punk Pod, and you can check out myself and David's different profiles from there or whatever. We love hearing from you guys, so thanks for those of you that are sending us messages or commenting. We love this show to be interactive, and so we want to be hearing from you what you think about the episodes. If you have any ideas or suggestions, we do our best to take those into account so that the show can be the best show it can be. So today you will be hearing my interview with Ethan Luck. If you are unfamiliar with him, he has been playing music in various bands for 20 plus years now. I originally met Ethan in 2002 when he was playing guitar with the Supertones, and so I've known him now for 18 years, and so it was really cool to get to catch up with him and talk and just kind of see where he's at now and how far he's come and what that journey's been like. Some of the things we touch on is what it was like joining his first actual band that he started touring with, which was the band called the Dingees, how he's never actually been signed to Tooth and Nail, even though he's been in multiple Tooth and Nail bands, the transition between different bands, including style and instruments, how he always seems to join well-established bands, what it was like touring the world with Kings of Leon, and the drastic shift between touring in more underground bands, so to speak, versus mainstream bands playing arenas. He also mentions playing on The Tonight Show with Relient K, playing in front of 80,000 people with the Supertones, and then we end with him sharing 3 albums that were really influential to his style of music. We also cover a ton of other stuff. It's quite a long episode, so bear with us, but there was just so much good stuff. It was hard to stop, and so I hope there's lots of good stuff in here for you guys that you find interesting, as I do. So kick back, get a snack, and enjoy my conversation with Ethan Luck. Yeah, so today we've got Ethan Luck on the show. He has played in many bands that you may or may not be familiar with, but as we kind of talk through some of the bands he's played in, hopefully there'll be something you'll recognize. If not, go check it out because he's an amazingly skilled musician and has lots of experience in studio and touring bands and has been around forever. We were just talking about how the first time I met Ethan was in 2002, and that's already 18 years ago, and he's still at it. So it's really cool to have you on the show today.
Well, you're too kind. You Canadians are so nice.
Yeah, well, we gotta take what we can get here. So
that's crazy. That was 18 years ago. That I was I was coming through Canada and you and I met. That's so wild to me. That tour doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yeah, well, that was the year I graduated high school, and that feels like forever ago. So if I think of it in those terms and what's happened since, it feels like an eternity ago. But because you're kind of doing the same thing you've been doing, so maybe it just feels like it goes by quicker because you've still been touring and playing with lots of different artists, and so do you feel like that kind of almost freezes time a bit because you haven't really, or I'm assuming I guess I shouldn't say you haven't done other things, but
I've kind of done other things, but mainly, yeah. I mean, I haven't stopped touring since 1998. But yeah, it does sometimes feel like, time goes by way too quick in this world, and there's a lot of musicians that'll say that have toured for a long time. Specifically when you talk about, us meeting in 2002, there's certain tours I think back on, and even recently, in the last few days, I've been like cataloging old photos and photo discs and backing them up on hard drives, because I used to store photos on CDRs, but just trying to organize all that stuff. And so I've been posting a couple photos from like just past tours and bands and stuff, and just looking through photos, I'm like, that does not seem like it was 20 years ago or something. It's a trip sometimes. I mean, there's so many vivid memories in my mind from every tour I've ever done. And I feel like I've got a good memory for a lot of that stuff, and venues I've played in cities and different stories like that yeah, sometimes, me and, one of the guys from my old band or whatever will be talking about something, and I'm like, that was that long ago? That's like there's no way.
Yeah, it's crazy. Time just kind of goes. And I was, so my daughter is a Supertones fan, and so she was asking who I was talking with tonight. And so when I told her, she wanted to see a picture, and so I was Googling some pictures of the band when you were in it, and you definitely look like, you can look at it and it's like, okay, that's definitely Ethan from, 10, 15 years ago. So I guess, maybe for you, because it's, your day in, day out, but I guess as a outsider, I look and, I can obviously see the difference. I'm not trying to say you're age. Well, you are aging. I'm not trying to say you're aging poorly or anything. You know what I mean? But you look.
Breaking news: we're all aging.
But you look at it, it's like, oh man, like I do the same with myself with photo albums. When I had my first kid or whatever, and so anyways, that's a whole other thing. Time goes by, so that's just how it goes.
Well, I'm glad your daughter's a fan. That's so cool.
Yeah. So what would you say is like one main experience that you had in your life that really made you think, I want to play music for the rest of my life? Or was that the thought, or did it just kind of happen?
That happened at a young age. I started playing guitar when I was like 11 years old, I think. And I didn't necessarily have that light bulb moment like, I'm going to do this for a living. But my dad's a guitar player, and he played in bands and toured around. And, growing up, I always would watch him play guitar and play with his friends. And, he had his record collection, and I would, as a kid, go pick out, back in California, go pick out records, and we'd play them. And, it wasn't until my family moved from Long Beach, California down to Orange County that I started getting an interest in guitar. I was like playing baseball, like a regular California kid, just like going to the beach and playing Little League baseball. But one day something just kind of clicked. I was already kind of getting into music. I was already like, fans of certain bands and stuff. I didn't really know anything about the bands because, this is pre-internet and stuff. But,
right.
I would just hear stuff on the radio, like on K-Rock or this old hard rock station called KNAC back then. And I would just hear stuff that I liked. And then one day my dad just asked me if I wanted to play an instrument. And I told him drums. And he said, maybe we could try a guitar first and see how that goes. Because I think he was worried just about the noise.
Right.
And rightfully so. Drums are loud. So I ended up trying guitar. And, but I think that moment was kind of looking at my dad and asking him to figure out a song. And he would figure it out by ear. And I thought, that's what I want to do. Now, as an 11-year-old, I never thought, oh, this could be my job one day. There's that wasn't even a thought on either end of it. It was just something I just want to play guitar. And then once I, through whether it was church or junior high or high school, I started meeting friends that also played instruments, and that just only amplified my love of music. Yeah,
and I guess that just kind of kept going and never went away, right?
Oh yeah, still here. I mean, I was literally just sitting here playing guitar through an amp before you called. That's If you see my studio, there's guitars hanging everywhere and stuff I've collected and stuff over the years. So it's like I'm still obsessed with it. I'm a avid vinyl collector, and I'm always immersed in music. There's not a day that goes by that like some kind of music isn't played on the record player or by me, in our house.
Love that. Is your dad still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. He's out in California still, and he doesn't play professionally. He hasn't for a long time. I think once him and my mom had me and my twin sister when, back in 78, he did it for a few more years, kind of locally at bars and stuff like that. But, back then it was just tough. He was just like, I got to get a better job that, can pay the bills and raise 2 kids at once.
Yeah. So what does he think of you, like, still being a musician? Did he ever, think that was going to happen, or has it kind of progressed, each time you joined a different band or did a different project? Was he kind of just like, yep, that's just Ethan doing his thing, or was it like, okay, you're still doing this, hey?
Yeah, I think he saw at a young age that I wasn't going to stop doing this. Even if I hadn't gone into it as a job, I think he just saw like my passion for it, and he saw how much I was practicing, and how excited I was when I would make some new friends that played drums or bass, and then I would go to their house and we would jam, and but of course once I started getting to the point where I was like, it was my full-time job, then he was proud of me the whole time. But I mean, that only kind of like amplified it, I think. Like, I think because I took it many steps further than my dad did.
Right.
I think he was just that much more excited that, like, hey, I went this far and you've just sprinted past me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because my dad, I mean, he probably stopped playing, not necessarily out or live, but stopped playing or stopped trying to make it like a career. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like by the mid 80s or something. Because at that point I had a little sister, so there's 3 kids, so for him it was tough, and it wasn't like he was in this established band that was already making a bunch of money and he could afford, to raise his family and still be on the road and stuff like a lot of people can now. But
yeah,
but yeah, it was just a different time, and he was in a different position, and for me, like, I don't have kids, and so I've been able to keep doing this. And not that you can't tour and have kids, there's thousands of people and musicians that do it. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know, man. I just stuck with it, and it's all I've ever wanted to do. It's all I still want to do. A lot of people that have amazing careers as lawyers or doctors or even an accountant or a business manager or something. It's like you go to school for that, you learn all these traits and all these skills to do that job. And I look at it like I put in that same amount of time, but with instruments,
Yeah. And there's also almost like so much more possibility with that. You become, well, I mean, you're always learning with anything, but, as a musician, if you're open to it, you get a studio gig with, a country band or a punk band or whatever, and you have all these opportunities where it's like, I can't really learn this in school, but I've got these skills that I can now use for something totally different and keep learning and growing. And so that's what's really neat about music. Like, and so with saying that, I get that every, occupation, there's room to grow and things to learn, but, say for an accountant, it's like, if you're really good with numbers, you're really good with numbers. You're just going to kind of use it in different cases. But with a musician, like, there's so much kind of back and forth with that. Yeah.
And it's not like it comes without struggle too. It's like,
for sure.
You might have let's say you're an accountant or a lawyer or something, you might be very passionate about that job and it's, let's say it's, very secure for most of your life. I mean, I tell a lot of people, like, if there's anyone that's like kind of coming up that ever asks me like, hey, got any advice for me? Which is always weird for me to give someone advice. I just feel weird doing it. But what I will usually say is like, just know that it's not all just sunshine and rainbows every day. And most people aren't going to get to do what I've done. And I haven't even done it on a level like some of these, like, you look at bands like the Foo Fighters or whatever that are massive bands that could go sell out stadiums. I was lucky enough to be able to do it to where, on that kind of mid-level where it's like, hey, I'm making a living. This is great. But I mean, there's so many ups and downs. I mean, for years and years till present day, I mean, I still have to go work side jobs and do all that stuff that I don't want to do.
Right.
But that side work and that boring job or having to go out and do Uber and Lyft and pick up a bunch of drunk tourists around Nashville. That kind of stuff sucks. But
you can play your CD in the car while they're driving and some free promotion.
Oh, no way, man. That's a big no-no in Nashville, at least for me. I'm sure there's a lot of Uber drivers that do that in Nashville, like, hey, check out my new country song. But no, those are the things that you just, in my mind, it's like I have to do that to get to that next step of being back on the road, or whatever. It fills the time, and
yeah.
And there's been times where like I've had great jobs in music where like I've been on a yearly salary where it's like, great, I don't have to worry when I come home for this month that I'm going to be able to pay my bills or not. Or other times it's like, it all just depends, man. In this world, like sometimes you get, a gig that's salary based. Sometimes it's just weekly. And when you're off the road, you don't get paid anything.
Yeah.
It all just depends, man. I mean, for the most part, most musicians that get into something probably aren't going to find a salary gig. When it does happen, it's great, but it's not as common as it used to be. So yeah, you have to have little side hustle things. Like I try to do studio work, which that's a whole nother struggle in and of itself. To get involved in Nashville. I'll do studio work from home and send it to people, and you just anything I can do that involves music. That helps pay the bills and stuff, like I'll do that first, and then if I have to go do a little side hustle thing, that's fine. I'll go do it and suck it up, and one day you look back and like, cool, I did that, great, but now I'm here back on the road doing this.
Yeah, and I guess that's the biggest shift from what we were just talking about. Like with an accountant to a lawyer, you get in your job or that firm and you just do it till you retire. Whereas musician, like you said, right, there's so much back and forth. You might have a salary gig for a year and then you have no work for 6 months, and right. Maybe, you're touring the world and, getting to hang out with your friends and do all this really cool stuff, but it definitely comes at a cost.
It totally does. It's easily one of the most inconsistent and unstable industries in the world. Yeah. I mean, in a year's time, I'll have 5 different jobs just in music. Yeah. It's like, oh, hey, I got hired to go out and be a drum tech for 3 months with this band, and then I went out for this month and played guitar for this guy, and then for the next 3 months I'm back to teching. It's like it's so up and down, man. It's that's the tough part about kind of giving someone advice on how to get into it. It's like just keep playing, and don't ever do it for the money, but if that comes along, then that's just a bonus.
Yeah. Would you say there's part of you that enjoys that kind of maybe unknown or just a change where it's like, okay, I'm playing, drums for a band for however long, and now I'm, teching or guitar, it's a bit different. Does that kind of excite you, or is it just kind of, it is what it is and you'll kind of do whatever?
It's kind of both, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that like, when I can't, find an artist to go play for a tour and I have to go into teching, because those jobs are a lot easier to get in the music world, if you know what you're doing, of course.
Right.
And there's a part of me that's like, I'm kind of crushed, like, oh, like for years and years, I've been the guy playing the songs and or playing the drums or guitar or whatever, and now I got to go tune the guitar for the guy doing that now.
Right.
And there is that feeling of like, did I just fail? Did I just get knocked down a notch kind of thing?
Right.
But I've done that enough too, where you kind of get used to it, and you always have to look, on the bright side. On the bright side of it, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm out here teching for whatever band, they're having a much better time than I am on stage,
right?
But I'm still traveling, I'm still around music, and it also affords me the time to kind of be away from home in new spaces and hotel rooms to work on my own music. And I mean, most of my solo music I've written in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of retrain your brain when you jump into something like that, because it is a bit of a, it's a bit of a blow to your ego. Not that I feel like I'm this egotistical person, but for so long you're the guy on stage and like people are singing the words back and you're having a blast, and then all of a sudden now you're the guy on the sidelines watching. It's like watching your dreams pass you by in a way.
That's a humbling feeling,
so,
I'm sure.
It totally is. And so you have to kind of jump into it like, okay, like this isn't permanent. Like I'm not going to be tuning guitars the rest of my life. this is just this season right now. Like, that's just how it is. Like, as much as like people, musicians move to Nashville all the time and think they're going to make it, like, it's a really tough town. And I've lived here off and on for 17 years. And so, yeah, it's just tough, man. You just have to kind of like swallow your pride and be like, okay, like, this is work. It's good work. It's good paying work. And it's something that still keeps me traveling, seeing different cities and seeing friends around the country or around the world and seeing other parts of the world, seeing Saskatoon, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Do you remember the first live performance that you saw that, kind of going back to when you got into music, was there a live performance that sparked your interest? So it wasn't just you kind of learning how to play something just for the fun of it, but that you could, play music for other people and kind of...
Yeah. Well, I mean, since I started playing music so young, I don't think I really started going to any shows until I was probably in my early teens.
Okay.
And a lot of that was like, because I was so involved in church back then, it was a lot of like, bands would come and play at your church or whatever, or like whatever local church in Orange County. And, but I think for me, a lot of it had to do with the early Tooth and Nail scene, because my cousin used to work for Tooth and Nail when they were still based in Orange County, in Irvine.
Cool.
He was in a Tooth and Nail band as well. And so he would like, at Christmas, he would always give me a bunch of Tooth and Nail stuff, like early stuff. This is like 93, 94, I think.
That's awesome.
I can't remember exactly what year. So he was giving me like the early, Tooth and Nail shirts, and I thought it was so cool. And because all my friends at church were showing me like these Christian rock bands, and they were all so terrible.
Yeah.
I never liked Petra or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought it was so cheesy. I'm like, there's got to be something better out there. And so Tooth and Nail stuff, this is before I was even on the label, was, really piquing my interest. And then, I remember a couple shows in particular that really, at this point I was already playing like at church. I was playing like high school parties and stuff, but never like a proper show at a club or anything.
Yeah.
But I remember like being in high school and seeing MXPX's, I think it was their first ever show in Southern California. I want to say they maybe had the first 2 records out.
Okay.
But they played at like this church like 5 minutes from my house, and I went to the show, and I'm like, dude, this is so good. And I just got obsessed with that band. And it was that. And then I remember going to see, I remember seeing Rush in like 94 when I was like a sophomore in high school. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But that didn't seem realistic. They were an arena band,
right.
But I remember
change.
Oh yeah, totally. But I remember going to see, I think it was two main, besides MXPX show, 2 shows in particular where I believe it was in 94 as well, maybe 93 actually. I went and saw Fishbone at this venue called the Showcase Theater in Corona, and it was so good. And I was like in the pit and like going crazy, and like the singer like jumped in the crowd and his boot hit me in the face, and I thought it was the most awesome thing. I had like a swollen eye the next day at school, and I thought it was so bitchin' that everyone's like, "You gonna fight?" I was like, "No, I got kicked in the face by Angela Moore from Fishbone," and everyone's like, "Who's that?" Like, you wouldn't get it.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, man. So I'd say by late high school, I was in like, little local bands with friends, and we would play shows around Orange County, and it was super fun. But yeah, I don't think I really understood that it could be a job until probably 2000, maybe. Probably into, like when I had kind of rejoined the Supertones, because I was in the band when I was in high school.
Okay.
When they were a whole different band, they were just a different name, different style, and everything, and they honed in on the ska sound. And then at that point, I was still in high school, and they were all out of high school. I was the young one, and so I had to kind of bow out of the band because they were like, "We're gonna go on the road. Can you do schoolwork from the road?" I was like, "There's no way. My parents can let me do that, and B, I don't want to do that. As far as like, yes, I want to go on the road, but I'm not going to do homework on the road."
Yeah, that seems crazy. Yeah, awesome. Well, we're gonna get into to some of these bands. We'll get to Supertones in a bit, but I want to start with your band, the Dingees. So this was my first introduction to you, and I can still picture the music video for maybe it was Bulletproof or something, like the one where you guys are kind of walking
Chaos
around.
Control.
Or Chaos Control, yeah. And,
super boring video.
Oh man, I used to think that was the coolest. It's on an old Tooth and Nail video. You guys were just kind of walking around town and just looking amazing, and
we were trying, man.
well, you succeeded for a small town kid like me who hadn't experienced that kind of thing. So, how long had the Dingees been writing and playing together before you guys signed with Tooth and Nail?
Well, the Dingees kind of started as a Supertones side project,
Right? Yeah,
in
I
a
remember hearing
way.
about
So, yeah, so it was like Pegleg and Bean, and I believe Jeff, and then also, so at the time, Brian, who was playing guitar on the Supertones, who I ended up, when I came back, I replaced him. He was kind of in the Dingees. Tony, the bass player of the Supertones, is also a really good drummer, so he was playing drums in the Dingees, and it was just like this local, kind of dirtier ska band, a little more kind of had a when Rancid does ska, kind of that kind of
Right.
vibe, I guess. And you know, it was just like this fun thing. And then Dave, the sax player in the Supertones at the time, who would end up actually joining the Dingees, he would play and stuff. And so the Supertones were blowing up at this point, and when they would go on the road forever, and then all of a sudden the Dingees were like, okay, so there's basically three of us. Like, we need somebody else to come in and let's make this a band. So they were writing songs for, I don't know, I'd say probably 2 years before I kind of,
Okay.
I knew all the guys. I was in that kind of circle and friends with everybody because of the Supertones dudes. But and you know, they knew me as a guitar player, but also knew I played drums too. And so one of the dudes hit me up and said, "Hey, you want to come over and jam with us and see how it goes?" Because I think they had tried out a couple people, and so I was actually talking to Jeff Holmes not too long ago, the guitar player. We're still buddies, and he was on the first record, and he told me, he said, "Man," he said, "I remember when you came over to play with us in Pegleg's parents' garage." He's like, "We had just written that song Rebel Youth."
Yeah, love it.
And he said the second you hit the first snare drum, it was so loud that we all were like, yeah, he's going to play with us.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that happened there. But what's funny is I actually never signed. I think they had already signed to Tooth and Nail right before I started.
Okay.
I think, I could be wrong, but that's a little fun fact that any Tooth and Nail nerd may not know about me, is that I've actually never been signed to the label.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Ever.
Which maybe that comes with its perks. You don't have to worry about contracts and all that kind of stuff. You just come in and go out when you want.
There's definitely perks like that, but it's there's other things that that aren't so good about doing that. It's like you have to be really careful about when it comes to like publishing or like ownership in a band and things like that. But I didn't know any better back then, man. I was still a teenager, just ready to just get on the road and go play music, and I didn't care what I made. I didn't care if I was on the label officially. I didn't care about royalties. I didn't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah. How did it feel being on Tooth and Nail after kind of having that experience of, was that your cousin you said being on there, and just kind of being aware of, the cool factor of it, and then now you're in a band on that label? What did that feel like?
It was cool. I mean, I don't know. I think I had a bit of a different feeling once we were kind of on the label and we had recorded that first record, Armageddon Massive, with Steve Kravac. I thought all that was awesome and it was so cool. We're recording with Steve, who did, Life in General and all these other great records at West Beach in Hollywood. And I don't know. I just kind of felt excited that I was a part of something that other people were excited about, and that I was also excited about when I was a bit younger. I just thought it was cool, man, because for me, there was kind of a golden era of Tooth and Nail, and it was kind of like 95 to like maybe like the early 2000s.
Yep.
And there was still great stuff they put out after that, but this was this era where like Tooth and Nail just dominated, like, Cornerstone Festival in Illinois. It's like they had a whole Tooth and Nail day. It's like, I feel like all these little Christian kids that grew up in church with like lame music finally had something to like listen to that was cool. And because it's like, it is like, if I don't know if you grew up in church or whatever, but Christian music sounds like Christian music, I don't know. I've just never really cared for a lot of it. And I've never even really liked the term Christian music, because I've never thought of it as a genre.
Right. Yeah.
It's just music, and you sing about this, they sing about that, or whatever. But yeah, man, it was super exciting to and I don't think that excitement really, I guess, peaked until we went on our first tour.
So how much did the Dingees tour? Like, if some of the guys were in Supertones, or what was that dynamic like? Like, were you guys able to tour, somewhat full time?
Oh, yeah,
or
totally.
Was it?
No, we toured pretty full time out of the gate. Like, because at this point, by the time, like, I kind of went over there and tried out on drums or whatever. Like, at that point, they had already kind of decided, let's make this like a real band that's not just local. And and obviously the dudes that were in the Supertones that would play in it, they were busy on the road, so it became its own thing and not just a side project anymore.
Right.
So I mean, and there was a good amount of time when I first set foot in Peg Leg's parents' garage to the time we recorded, Armageddon Massive. We started writing a bunch of more songs, and then we ended up demoing like 6 of them at this little studio in Laguna Beach that Time Bomb Recordings owned, and so we spent a lot of time with the songs. And then by the time we were on the road, our first tour was probably 6 to 7 weeks long.
Okay.
It was we were the opener for Value Pack and Cody Hook.
Oh yeah.
When was that? Spring of '98, I believe.
Yeah, man, that would have been like a dream tour for me.
It was fun, man. And that was, again, it was that exciting kind of golden age of Tooth and Nail where like especially with like punk rock stuff, like anything Tooth and Nail would put out, like a little teaser or a little ad in a magazine, you just saw a picture of Cody Hook or whoever, and it was just like, I don't care what that is, I gotta get it, or I gotta go to that show, and so once we started that tour, all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, this is like that was the first time I actually saw like, a few hundred people like singing Dingees songs back to us while we're playing. It was such a trip. Like I'd never experienced that on that level at all,
Yeah, and that's one of the things that like I'm so intrigued about. Like from like I said before, a small town kid like me, like I'd get the magazines and sampler CDs, and I just assumed every band on Tooth and Nail was huge. And now that I've been doing some interviews, I've come to find out it wasn't always as it seemed. But that's cool that you had that experience. That you were seeing that that kind of fluctuation of people coming out and knowing who you were, because you were on this label and playing with these other bands. And yeah, that's so cool.
Well, that's really one of the best things Tooth and Nail did back then. It was hype bands. Like you said, like it seemed like every Tooth and Nail band was huge, and the Dingees weren't huge by any means. I think it seems like over the years it's become more of kind of a cult following for the Dingees.
Right.
But I think their first record sold, and this is good, by the way, for back then. I think it sold like 40,000 records.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And for us, it was like, oh my gosh, it's compared to like the Supertones at the time when they were doing Strike Back, and at the time that record's going gold or something. That's a huge difference. We weren't this big selling band, but I didn't care really. I just like, if we were playing shows and there were people that were excited and like going crazy in the crowd, like that's all I really needed, But we also played tiny shows. We would go out and, hey, we're going to start a tour, in the Midwest somewhere, and we're driving all the way there to start the first show, and we're going to play a couple shows along the way, and there'd be like maybe 50 kids total because we're there by ourselves and not with a Cody Hook or whatever, And so that's where you saw like, okay, like not everyone's here for us, for these shows, but still, when there's 40 or 50 kids, like that was still exciting to me. And those are the kids that still paid money to come see you. And it just blew me away that like, someone from the middle of nowhere, Texas, or, up in Saskatchewan, like somehow had this CD of this little band from Orange County, that blew my mind that like our music was all over the place.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty common thing, especially back then. Obviously there was no streaming. Everything was just, your music was kind of with you, right? Either it was on CD or you were playing it live. And and so that's kind of how, word of mouth got around and stuff. And so you didn't really have any way to gauge of who was listening to you, right? Whereas now you can, look that up online or, Spotify and all that. And so it must have been, so that's probably cool for you starting from where you did to now where you are. Obviously there's been such a huge shift, that's just a cool thought to have, that, how many different decades you've been in and seen the music industry, go up and down and shift. And So that's
Mostly down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it depends how you look at it. Like, it's easier to access music now, and
Oh,
people
for sure,
have it
yeah.
all there. But so you mentioned recording with Steve Kravac. Was that your first experience in kind of a legit studio, or with a producer who kind of knew what he was doing?
That was my first experience with like a in my mind, a producer that was like on the top of the mountain, because he had done Life in General, and me and all my friends and everybody loved that record, and it sounded so
sure.
good, and I think it still sounds good. Same,
I love it.
Slowly going with the Buffalo, and I had done some recording in studios. Like I had a local band, and back in high school, and we saved up like $300 and recorded out at Bob Moon's studio, who was a early Tooth and Nail producer, did Teenage Politics and stuff like that. And that was really cool and a cool experience. But like when I got to work with Steve, it was like Steve totally kicked my ass in the studio. He was, we had a nickname for him. We called him Dr. Steve Kravakian, if you know that reference. But he's the sweetest dude and such a good hang. But he is a taskmaster in the studio. Like, I thought I went in there, knowing everything. Like, oh, I got these songs down, no problem. And I'm setting up extra drums and extra cymbals, and he was the one that taught me to simplify playing. And I've told him this. I had him on my podcast 2 years ago. When
I heard that.
So when Armageddon Massive turned 20, I did 4 episodes with the 3 other dudes in the band and Steve, all separate episodes. And I told Steve, I was like, man, you're the reason that I play as simply as I do now. Or I guess the better way to put it is, I play to help the song, not to be like the star of the song.
Right.
When you're younger, you just want to play as fast as possible and as many beats or as many notes as possible, and set up splash cymbals and all these little things on your drum kit to because I was listening to everything from Rancid to No Doubt or whatever, and I would see a drummer put up a China or whatever cymbal. Yeah. I'm like, I gotta do that too, And so Steve kind of, pulled the reins in on me, and I had a drum tech in the studio, which that was a first. That might have been the last time I had a tech in the studio, actually. But it was just like a 4-piece kit, 2 crashes, hi-hat, and ride. That was it. And if I did any fill that was longer than like 2 beats, he was like, nope, too long. And he grilled me, man.
Did that ever cause any tension with you? Like, was there points where you're like, can I just like play this drum part I have in my head? Or, because I find that as I listened through this album this week, like I couldn't really remember if there was really any drum fills on it. And as a drummer, and I get that, a lot of the songs, were, more simple, the way they were pieced together. So it's not like they needed a bunch of crazy drum fills, but it's still nice to have something different than just the beat. And so how was that as a drummer going in and being like, okay, is this guy just like totally killing my vibe here, or is it really for the sake of the record?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little disheartening at first, just because, in my mind, we had been playing a lot of these songs live for like the last 6 months to a year or whatever, just around town and stuff, and because we hadn't gone on tour yet. But there's videos on YouTube that someone sent me one time, and I can tell that it's before we recorded the record, and I'm watching myself play, and I'm like, wow, like I was just busier, and I at first I didn't understand why he was doing it. I was just like, this is such a bummer. Like, I want to play this fill that I made up or whatever, but over the course of doing drums, we did drums for like 5 days or something, which nowadays, like for instance, when I did my last record, my own solo record, I did all the drums in a day and a half, because I'm just a different player now. Yeah. But back then, it was a bummer at first, but I slowly started to understand why Steve was doing this and why I needed to do it, and why the simpler drumming was better for the record. Yeah. Looking back now, what is it now, 22 years later, I would hate to hear that record with crazy busy drums. Now, if I was technically a badass drummer back then, you know what I mean? If I was like a Travis Barker level drummer, it might have been different because I could pull it off. He probably heard stuff that I didn't. Like, in my mind, oh, I'm nailing this drum fill. He's probably in the control room going, no, you're not. But that's what makes a good producer,
Yeah, that's true.
They're the ones that have to tell you the bad news. Like, hey, I know you love this part and you're really married to it, but it sucks and it's got to go. I'm sorry. It's just how it is, you know?
Yeah. For those that maybe aren't familiar with the Dingees, like you guys played, punk, ska, and reggae, but oftentimes you wouldn't really, even mix those. There was kind of like a punk song and then a ska and a reggae. So what was that like as a drummer, recording a song that was more faster upbeat, and then, next song you're doing a reggae song where it's just kind of hi-hat and rim knocks and just kind of keeping it simple?
Man, I loved that aspect of it, that it wasn't like, compared to the Supertones where you have like the verse is kind of ska and the chorus is more, rock or whatever. I like that we kind of, for the most part, kept every song in its own little world. I enjoyed it. I mean, nothing to me was, everything with Steve was challenging. But I think doing having every song like that, where here's a reggae song, here's a ska song, here's a punk song, all that stuff made me a better drummer and better musician, not only on drums, but on guitar too. Cause I was learning stuff, I'm a guitar player longer than I am a drummer, but I would have watched Jeff Holmes track guitars in the studio and watch Steve kind of work with him and tell him to do stuff. And it all just made, I learned so much from that record. Like, I don't know if I've learned more from any record in my life than that one. I mean, that really awesome. Shaped me as a musician on the main three instruments that I play. It's like the first influence in my life was my dad. And then, Steve Kravac is up there, man. I mean, if I would have never done that record, like, I don't know if I'd be even close to the musician I am today. And that's not to say like I'm this shredder guitar player or whatever. It's like just the way I approach writing and recording and playing live. It's like, especially being a drummer in that band. It's like I'm just part of the rhythm section. I'm not the show.
Right.
There's a time and place for that. If you're a Travis Barker, if you're a Neil Peart or whatever. There's room for that, and you have the skill to pull that off, and I didn't. I was just like, I just want to hit the drums hard. So, yeah, man, no, I'm very thankful for that recording session back in, that was 97, I think we recorded that.
Yeah. So would you say that was your favorite memory about your time in the Dingees, was getting that experience?
Gosh, man, I haven't really thought about that. I think so. I mean, that'd be up there, man, for sure. I mean, that, like I said, that changed my entire world, and how I approached, specifically drumming at the time. There's a ton of good memory. I mean, that first tour with Cody Hook and Value Pack was a blast and stuff. And, but yeah, recording that record is definitely, that'd be in my top two, probably, if I had to sit down and really think about it. Like I said, man, I learned so much, and I can't imagine that record sounding the way it would if Steve didn't, wrangle me to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, we're going to move on here to the next one. So we're going to not go too in depth in this, because it was just a side project. So this is one that you had with Matt from the Supertones. It was called Gigantic. Is that
that was the name of the record? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not the best name. It was called Grand Incredible. Yeah, the name of the record was Gigantic. We were just going to call it Gigantic, but then we thought it'd be funny to do GI because Grand Incredible. Yeah, not the best album title, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm kind of proud of this. I think a long time ago I asked Brandon Ebel, what's the worst selling record under the Tooth and Nail umbrella, which includes BC and Solid State and all that stuff. Yeah. And I don't know if this is still true, but at one point that was the worst selling record under the Tooth and Nail ethos. But it was a blast to make, yeah.
How did this project come about? I don't really know a whole lot about it.
Honestly, let's see. That was so 2001 is when I moved to Nashville, and I moved in with Mojo, the singer of the Supertones, because he lived out here. And I took Dan's old room, who was the trombone player, because he moved out and got married. And I was single at the time. He was single at the time, and all we did was, when we weren't on the road for Supertone stuff, all we would do is sit in his basement and just write songs. I had a little hard disk recorder and some speakers, and my drum set and a couple microphones, and we would just record demo after demo after demo. And so at the time we were writing for a Supertones record called Hi-Fi Revival, which coincidentally is probably not the best Supertones record. But we were trying something new and whatever. But so the majority of the songs from that Grand Incredible record are actually either at the time unused or unfinished songs that we wrote for the Supertones.
Okay.
We just had so many songs left over. I mean, we probably wrote like 30, 35 songs in that time period. And so what we did was we took, I think there's like 17 songs in that record. And I think what we did was we kind of took those songs, got rid of like the horn parts, and made them more kind of rock songs. And we just wanted to have fun, man. We had all these extra songs, and it was just like this silly idea. We asked Brandon, we're like, hey, we have a bunch of songs. Can we do a little side project thing? And he was like, sure. And we got like this little budget, enough to basically fly us to Seattle. And that was the first time I had worked with Aaron Sprinkle.
Okay, awesome.
So if anything good came out of that record, it was me meeting Aaron Sprinkle, and we're still friends to this day. And he now lives in Tennessee.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Was there any like hopes for this project, or it was strictly just let's do an album, put it out there, and move on?
I mean, there's always a hope for it, even if it's a side project, in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, okay, like the Supertones are we've plateaued for sure. And, starting that downhill journey. And, so of course in the back of your mind, you're thinking like, man, there's some good songs on here. Like not everything's cool. I mean, excuse me. Shoot, we wrote 3 songs about the Lakers and put them on the record because we were that nerdy about basketball.
Nice.
But we thought, there's some cool songs in here. We did a Cyndi Lauper cover, and so we thought, who knows, maybe something could stick. I mean, that's really what music is, and that's what putting records out is record labels just throw it against the wall, and most of it falls to the floor, but something might stick. And in our case, we fell to the floor. But yeah, I mean, we didn't necessarily get our hopes up about anything, but of course, it's always in the back of your mind anytime you record a record. Like, you know what, maybe this will do something.
Yeah.
You just don't know. I mean, shoot, I'm sure the dudes in Nirvana had no idea what was going to happen when they were recording Nevermind.
Right.
To them, they're like, we're still going to be that little band from Aberdeen, Washington.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the Grand and Curl record is anywhere near the caliber of Nevermind. It's not even close, but that's just an example.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do an episode sometime where we match those two and to contrast them.
Well, it'll be your least listened to episode.
Well, I can go along with the least sales then. So how did joining the Supertones come about? Like you've mentioned a few times, there was some crossover relationships and stuff, and
yeah. Well, so I kind of rejoined the band in early 2000. Like I want to say it was January, maybe like right at the beginning of the year. And I'd already known the dudes for 7 years at that point because I played with them when I was in high school, like I said earlier, and. One day I got a call from Mojo and he said, hey, we're kicking Brian out of the band and, do you want to play some shows with us? I'm sorry. It started with recording. They're like, hey, we're recording a new record. Do you want to come in and play guitar on it? And I was like, of course. Yeah. Cause at that time, like I was done with the Dingees and there was about a 6-month period where I was just kind of in limbo. Like, what do I do? Like I still want to tour, but I don't know how to like get into another band at this point,
Yeah.
So yeah, he called me and so they were recording what would become Loud and Clear, the 4th record. And so I went in and played all the guitars on it. And I was doing that. And at the same time, they asked me hey, you want to come out and play some of these festivals? They're just like weekend fly dates. I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And I was like really excited to be back on guitar, which is like my home instrument.
Yeah.
And kind of so the reason like that record, even though I'm the guitar player on the record, like I'm not in the photo shoot and stuff, is they did all that before they like officially asked me to like rejoin the band.
Oh yeah, that makes
and
sense.
They actually asked me a couple times because I think I said no initially because I had just gotten enrolled in this school in Southern California to do like I was taking classes for like production, engineering, mixing, all that stuff. And it was the first time I was really excited about school for once. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do, and I was going to maybe go be an engineer at a studio or something like that. And so I thought about it long and hard, and then then finally I was like, what am I thinking? Like, of course I need to do this. Like, they're an established band, they're my friends already, and that was kind of my first taste of, okay, this could be a career, like a long-term career, with the ups and downs in between, of course. But that was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, like I can definitely pay my bills now. This is awesome, and I was still living at home at the time with my parents, and I think that's probably the first time my parents were probably looked at it going like, okay, like we knew he was going to do this, but like, they came to a show and there's like 5,000 people there as opposed to like 50 people with the Dingees or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I think they saw the size of it and were like, wow, okay, they definitely knew at that point that I was not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that like, kind of joining a band that had been, pretty well established already? And I mean, obviously, like you said, there was people coming out, and did at points did it maybe seem like too good to be true, or it was just like, all right, this opportunity's come up, I'm just going to kind of take it and ride it? And
yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, it was like, catching a wave in the ocean. It's like, I'm going to ride this thing as long as I can, which ended up being about, almost 6 years.
Yeah.
But it didn't really intimidate me or anything, just, because I was used to playing live shows, and not that the Dingees played like massive shows, but every once in a while at a festival, like when Dingees would do Cornerstone or something, the tent would be packed and there'd be like, I don't know what that held back then, maybe let's say 3,000 people or something.
Yep.
And to me, that was just the biggest crowd I'd ever played in front of. And so the Supertones, obviously they drew a lot more people, a much more popular band and stuff like that. So it was a little bit of a trip, but again, like, playing music just kind of overshadowed that in a way. Like that stuff is super exciting to get in front of a big crowd, but like I was just so pumped to be on stage with my friends, like playing guitar and feeling the energy of the crowd, and just, making sure I nailed all the parts and stuff like that. Cause I think they only gave me like 2 weeks notice, maybe like, hey, you want to play the show with us in two weeks?
Yeah.
And I had to learn like, I don't know, 18 or 20 songs, and I was already familiar with most of the songs, so it wasn't terribly hard to learn them. But I don't even think I did a rehearsal with them. I think I just flew out and did the show.
Oh, that's crazy.
But yeah, that was fun. I want to say that was in 2000. I'm trying to remember. I was talking about organizing photos earlier. I just came across a photo from that first show that I did. I want to say it was some festival.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Ohio, maybe
The Creation or something. Or was...
Oh no, that was a couple years later.
Oh, okay.
No, this was in early summer of 2000.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of the festival, but I remember it being like, one of those that had like 20,000 people or something. Because Creation was always known for having like 80,000, sometimes 90,000 people back in the heyday of it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And get on stage and like not really being able to see the end of the crowd, that was a trip at first, but I got over it pretty quick. Like, again, like stuff like that, you walk on stage and you see that many people and you're like, oh my God, that's so many. I think you get kind of, at least for me, you get kind of used to it. Like, the second the music starts, it's like you just feel the energy from the crowd. It just seems fake at that point.
Right.
You're just having a good time,
Yeah, man. So you guys did you put out about 5 records in 5 years, give or take a bit, in your time with them. How were you guys able to pump out so much music during that time?
Well, like I said earlier, man, a lot of it was the first 2 years I lived in Nashville before I moved back to California for a couple of years. Like I said, me and Mojo, all we did was write songs, and it was just nonstop. That's all we did. I still have songs on a hard drive that no one will ever hear for sure, but stuff that never made it onto any record. Most of them are not good, and they're not really complete.
Yeah.
But I mean, every once in a while, if I'm looking for something else, I'll pass by that and click on the folder. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about that. But yeah, I mean, we were just writing all the time. Even when I moved back to California, it was in this little apartment by the beach in South Orange County, and had my little, recording set up and like living by myself. And I would stay up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, like every night, just demoing little ideas and stuff. I still do that, I'll probably do that after we're done with this podcast episode.
Yeah. And does that just naturally flow? I mean, it's kind of a whole different subject, but for songwriting, like you just constantly have a flow of ideas, or does it take effort?
Yeah.
Like you have to kind of like start with just something and kind of see where it goes. And
yeah, I think like musically, I'm always thinking of ideas, even if I'm like driving a car or mowing the lawn or going to the skate park or something, I always kind of have, there's either a beat in my head or a guitar part in my head, and then sometimes I'll come home and like kind of flush it out and see what comes of it. Lyrically, I'm way slower on that front. A guy like Mojo can pump out lyrics real fast, but he's also been writing his own lyrics and melodies for 30 years.
Right.
And I've always been the guy in bands that's just writing the music part of it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I mean, even the last record we did called Revenge, I mean, most of that was written somewhat remotely. Like I was in California and I think every once in a while I would email him like an idea, but back then like email attachments couldn't be more than like a megabyte or something.
Right. Yeah.
And so I would write these guitar parts and I would write full songs. And then if I had 2 or 3 or 4 songs, I would literally burn them onto a CD and mail it to Mojo in Nashville.
Wow.
Just because at the time, like I had like slow internet, and I mean, this is still the high speed internet was a thing, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
But this is like an 03. And we were writing on the road and stuff like that. If we had downtime in the dressing room or on a day off, and we didn't have plans, it's like we'd sit on the bus and just try to hack out stuff. We were always writing stuff, and we always, before we would go into recording the record or any record, we would play almost all the songs live before we recorded them.
Right.
Just to try it out and get them used to it. So we were always pretty like seasoned by the time we got in the studio, and we would knock out records pretty quick.
So what brought or led to your departure from the Supertones?
We broke up.
Okay, so you were with them until that point when they kind of just everyone decided to end.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There was a couple more member changes, and it was basically me and Dan and Mojo were kind of the main ones that people knew left. And it was still fun. Like I often think about it, like the last lineup of the Supertones was me and Dan and Mojo, and then our friend Brett on trumpet, who also played in that band, the W's.
Oh yeah.
Our friend Chris on bass, and then one of my oldest friends, who's a badass drummer named John Wilson. And at points, man, that was honestly one of the funnest lineups, and it's funny that like some of the funnest years in that band were the years that we were doing the worst, like attendance-wise, financially. But those are also some of the most memorable and fun times, because it kind of brings you back down to earth a little bit and stuff like that, But yeah, we took it until October of 05.
Okay.
And that was our last show, and then they got back together a couple years later, and
right.
Which I didn't think, I thought that was too soon. Because of course when you're in a band and you break up, one of the first thoughts in your head is, okay, when can we do it again?
Right. Yeah.
Depending on how it ends. If it ends terribly and everyone hates each other, it's different. But none of us hated each other. We had a blast at our final show and played for like 2.5 hours and stuff. But yeah, and then me and Dan got asked to be a part of the reunion thing, but him and I turned it down. But at that point, I was touring with Relient K full time, so I physically couldn't even do it anyways. Right.
Yeah. What was like we mentioned before, just how you've kind of seen so many different shifts and change in music. What was that like? Joining Supertones when they were kind of at their peak. Ska was really popular and big, and then kind of as the years went on, it kind of died down a bit. Was that disheartening to see, or was that just kind of a part of reality and you just dealt with it?
I mean, it's reality. It wasn't like we were oblivious to it, I mean, I will say, like, bless you. I assume that was a sneeze.
Yeah, sorry, I covered the mic, so I wasn't sneezing in there, but I guess you still heard it.
Yeah, we weren't oblivious to the fact that ska was becoming less and less popular. At that point, rap rock was huge and kid rock was huge and all that stuff. And but I think the one plus side of kind of being in that Christian music world, a lot of things trend later in that world and also die out later in that world. So when a lot of like the bands like Real Big Fish or the Aquabats or whoever, when their popularity is going down in that era, ours was going down much slower because we had a totally different audience than they did. Not for the whole time, but for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was just part of reality, man. It's like, there's certain types of music that come and go, and they don't fully go away, but as far as, mainstream success and popularity, like they're gonna come and go, and all of us still love ska music and reggae music and stuff, but just because it wasn't on top 40 radio and stuff doesn't mean we didn't still like it.
Yeah.
But, at a certain point, it's just not sustainable to remain on the road, we probably could have done it differently and like just taken a hiatus or just said, hey, like we're not going to tour for a couple of years. We're just going to make records, do the Beatles thing where they just stay off the road. And why do I compare us to the Beatles? Jeez, I did Nirvana now the Beatles. That's so dumb.
It's all good.
Don't do that, people. Don't compare yourself to the Beatles. But that's, that same idea where like, hey, let's just go off the road and just make records. Like, cause we were actually writing for an EP we were going to try to release during our last year as a band. And we were so busy touring. It was the first time we just didn't have a ton of time to be at home and finish the songs and get in the studio.
Yeah.
And we had like 3 or 4 songs pretty close to being done. And it never really came to fruition, but, Mojo put out 2 solo records, and I think those ended up on there.
Okay.
Or at least a version of them, probably a little different. But yeah, it just get to the point, man, where it's like, and for us, it was just financially not smart to stay on the road. We weren't necessarily like losing a ton of money, but we weren't doing better. We were, the guarantees you're getting paid for shows are less and less each time. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, like a lot of people in the band have kids now. Like this is just, it's not making sense to be gone as long as we are when we're not bringing home as much as we used to. It was the smart decision just to kind of just stop.
Yeah. Well, that didn't stop you, as you then after that joined another very successful
It's not stopping
band.
me, no.
So you
Definitely not stopping me.
Yeah, you joined a band called Demon Hunter, which was quite the shift, in style, both musically and sonically.
Yeah.
So what led you to joining that band? What was that transition like? How much time was in between when you finished with Supertones and then you joined Demon Hunter?
It actually overlapped.
Okay.
I actually recorded on my first Demon Hunter record. Well, I guess let me back up real quick. So Don and Ryan, who from Demon Hunter, the brothers.
Yeah.
I knew them for a few years before that because they both do amazing graphic design work.
Yeah, go check them out.
And they did 2 of the layouts for Supertones records.
Right.
And so
makes sense.
I was either emailing or on the phone with them talking about changes or little details and stuff like that. And so I got to know them. Anytime we would be in Seattle and we'd go hang out at the label, I would hang out with those dudes. And so we were already kind of friends. And this is kind of how the music industry works, is like you make connections, not for the reason of trying to get a job one day or anything. You're just, I'm a very social person. I've got a lot of friends. I always have, and I want that to be that way for the rest of my life. I never expect it to lead to a job or a playing gig or something like that, but it just has worked out that way,
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of stuff happens. It's all word of mouth, It's like there's not like an application you fill out online to go be in a band.
Right.
It's usually word of mouth.
Yeah.
And but yeah, one day I got a phone call from Don, and he said, "Hey, would you want to join Demon Hunter?" And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, and I told him, I guess it was after we broke up, because no, it was just a bit before. And I said, well, sure, but Supertones are still going. We're in our final year or whatever. And yeah, and he was like, it doesn't matter where you live, like, because I told him like the band's ending soon and I'm moving, back to Nashville. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, we literally record one year and we tour the next year.
Yeah.
So I have to look back at some photos to figure it out, but I'm fairly certain I was still in the Supertones when I recorded on the first Demon Hunter record that I did, called The Triptych. And then in 2006 did my first tour with Demon Hunter, which was a blast. But because Demon Hunter is a part-time band, that was kind of my first taste of like, okay, like I have to get jobs in between this stuff. If Demon Hunter is only going to tour for 6 weeks out of an entire year, like,
right, yeah,
you can't make a yearly living off of that.
Yeah.
But at the time, Dan and I, one of the main reasons for moving back to Nashville is Dan from the Supertones and I started our own studio. It went for a couple of years and didn't do very well, unfortunately. Nashville's not a great place to open a studio.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them here.
Yeah.
We also didn't know what we were doing that much too. I think if I had the money to open one now, it'd be a little different. But yeah, so I went and recorded on my first Demon Hunter record, and then did the tour, and kind of was doing the studio thing, and then at this point, again, like I was talking about how you just make connections with other bands and stay in touch with people. I was already friends with the Relient K guys at that point. By 2008, I'd done 2 Demon Hunter records, and I also started drum and bass teching for Relient K because Demon Hunter was not full time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's how
and
that
we
goes.
were. Yeah, I mean, well, we were already buddies because back in 2001, I mean, Relient K was the opener for the Supertones on one of our tours.
I thought you were going to say they were the opener for Demon Hunter.
That would be good too. No, so there was 2 different Supertones tours where we were the headliner and they were one of the openers. And so yeah, obviously like the tide shifted and they, ska wasn't cool anymore, and like Relient K had gotten really popular, and I was just on the road with them as a guitar tech and as their friend, and just having a good time, and everything was cool. And then and then out of the blue one day, Matt Hoops called me and said, "Hey, you want to audition on drums? We're trying out 3 people, and we want you to be one of them." And I said no at first. I don't know why I did. I think I don't know. I think because I was there was a Demon Hunter tour coming up, and I didn't know how that was going to work, And then I was like, wait, what am I thinking? So I called him back, and I was like, actually, you know what? I'll do it. I'll audition, and I'll figure out the logistics later, because I thought, if I get this, it's probably kind of stupid of me to turn a full-time job down over a very part-time job,
Right. Yeah.
And I knew that the Demon Hunter guys would understand. And it turns out that, I called Don first and told him what was going on. And I said, hey, I auditioned. They want me to be in the band. It's full-time. I mean, literally starting in like 2 weeks, we're doing like a warm-up show, and then like we're doing a bunch of festivals and then going on a Warped Tour. And yeah, he was like, actually, I'm doing the same thing, because his graphic design company started taking off.
Oh, yeah.
In Invisible Creature, and he started getting bigger clients, and he was so busy long story short, really short story long, but Don and I quit the band at the same time, and because we both had other projects that were just busier.
Yeah.
And I talked to Ryan Clark, and he encouraged me to do it. He's like, dude, you need to go do that. So there was a little overlap where I joined Relient K. Before Warped Tour, we had like a month off or something. So I actually started the next tour with Demon Hunter, and I did the first like 3 weeks of it, of like a 5 or 6 week tour. And then the guy guitar teching for me, this guy Patrick, he took over for me afterwards, and he's still in the band.
Okay.
And he fits that band way more than I do. I mean, I'm a slight metalhead, and I love metal, and I do a Metallica podcast, but that dude's metal, and he was meant to be in Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
Over me. But dude, those were 4 really fun years, man, and really fun records to play on.
Yeah. What was that transition like playing, but at this point you'd be playing mostly, punk ska stuff. How did you transition your style or playing to such a drastic difference? Like, did that take a while to kind of figure out, even just the picking and how your hands moved and the sounds? And
not really, honestly, because when I was younger, before I got into like punk rock and reggae and ska, I was fully immersed in heavy metal, like Metallica and Anthrax and all these bands. So that's my early years of playing guitar were learning how to play metal. Not necessarily like super fast lead stuff, but a lot of the rhythm, fast downstroke stuff.
Yeah.
And even in the Supertones, I mean, even when we play like the more rock parts of songs, I would play downstrokes with my right hand as fast as possible and as much as I could. And so to go into Demon Hunter it was different, obviously, but like as far as like adapting my playing, like I already played metal just for fun,
Yeah.
and had since I was super young. So So yeah, it wasn't, the only difference was like energy wise on a tour like that. I mean, outside of being a drummer, like I don't think I've sweat more than when I was playing a Demon Hunter, like super high energy shows, packed out clubs that are like 120 degrees and just wringing your shirt out at the end of the night, like literally just water pouring out of it. But yeah, as far as playing goes, it wasn't that hard of a transition for me.
Yeah. What about, so you just mentioned the live playing, again, that's a very drastic change in audience from, ska and punk to heavy metal. How was that kind of, going out on stage and maybe expecting one thing that's like, oh yeah, okay, and now I'm playing a totally different kind of music and, maybe playing different venues to different types of people. And
yeah. I mean, there's obviously a different fan base, with the different styles of music, but honestly, the energy wasn't that much different from the Supertones just because we put on such a high energy show. And whenever, we had really good crowds, like they would go crazy and it was loud and they would sing the songs back to us really loud. And Demon Hunter, that was just more consistent, because that was just kind of part of the genre, like people singing as loud as they can and stuff. But I mean, that stuff happened with ska music too. You know?
That's true.
Or if you look at, artists like Dashboard Confessional, like Chris Carrabba, I mean, he kind of helped popularize that like crowd singing thing, in the early 2000s,
Yeah, definitely.
And so that energy was very similar, I think, for both bands, just based on the energy of the shows we were putting on.
Yeah, just more long-haired headbanging instead of skanking.
It pretty much, yeah, different types of dancing, skanking or slam dancing, whatever.
Yeah, what would you say are some of your favorite memories of your time in Demon Hunter?
I mean, obviously, I'm always going to, off the bat, choose recording certain albums just because I love being in the studio so much.
Yeah.
But honestly, I remember playing with Demon Hunter, it was a show in Orange County. It was out in this canyon area, kind of really close to where I used to live. I think it was actually when they did. So you remember the Cornerstone Festival?
Yeah.
At one point, they did a Cornerstone, Florida, and a Cornerstone, California.
Right.
And this was Cornerstone, California. Wow, I haven't thought about that in forever. That one just popped into my brain. And I remember doing that show, and it was like a pretty good sized crowd, and I just had a ton of friends there because it was kind of a hometown show for me. That, or anytime we would play the Glass House, which is a venue in Pomona, California.
I've been there a few times.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was always a real treat, just because. I mean, I think I played there twice with Demon Hunter, and we sold it out both times, and it was just like. It was like electricity in the room, It was so much fun, man, and having great openers on tours that I do, like Living Sacrifice opening one of them and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember that.
It was just so much fun, man. But yeah, I mean, the Demon Hunter live shows are always a good time, and I finally got to see a Demon Hunter live show just earlier this year, and they did like their acoustic / electric tour.
Yeah.
And they played down in Birmingham, Alabama. And so me and Bruce from Living Sacrifice, he lives here, we're friends, and him and I and his fiance at the time, and we drove down to Birmingham and watched the show. It was really fun to watch them play because I'd never really seen them play outside of being on stage.
Yeah. Did you have to get different gear, like different guitars and pedals and all that kind of thing? Or?
Yes. Yeah, that was a big difference. Because Demon Hunter played everything in drop tuning. So at the time they had a guitar deal with the company Washburn.
Okay.
And they made these custom baritone guitars for the band. And so yeah, I had to get these baritones that had longer scale length neck. Pretty much everything with the exception of a few songs I think we did live, we played in drop B, which is pretty low. But yeah, I still have one of them here in my studio that I've used on the last tour I did with them. That it's a decently cool looking guitar, but it's the finish that I didn't ask for. I remember.
Oh shoot!
I was trying to get a custom guitar made, and they're like, "Yeah, no problem, man." And so I was like, "I want this like wine red that you can see the wood grain." And I was sending them examples, and then they sent it to me, and it was like paper white with like black bindings.
Brutal.
I'm like, this is not at all what I asked for, but the tour starts in like a week. I have to use it, so I ended up using it, and I still have it. But yeah, so that was a big difference. I think at the time they had a deal with PV amps, and so I think one tour I did at 5150. The other one I did, they used to have a head called the Penta, which is kind of like their version of a Marshall. And they sounded great. For metal, man, they sounded awesome. And I didn't have a lot of crazy pedal stuff going on because it was pretty much just like full board, overdrive, distortion, or like a couple kind of clean parts. And usually I would just use my volume pedal to clean it up and pull it back a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. It's just cool hearing those different transitions. And I mean, amazing that you could adapt to that. And it's like, oh yeah, I can play, totally different gear, totally different style. And, but I guess with an instrument, if you know it really well, you just kind of adjust the playing a bit, different strings, different setup, but I guess it's still, right, it's still the same, whether it's scales or, different rhythms and patterns. So
I think for me too, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I not only discovered different types of music on my own, but my dad raised me on so many different types of music. So it's like I didn't grow up like just listening to metal and that's all I listened to,
Right.
I think earlier I sent you like my top 3 influential records.
We'll get to that kind of at the end there.
And they're they're kind of across the board, and I think taste in music combined with being a multi-instrumentalist, it makes it easy for me to adapt into different scenarios. Even now, I mean, I don't do it as much as I want. I wish I could, but I do a fair amount of just session work in Nashville, mostly at my friend's studio named Paul Moak. And, like literally Monday and Tuesday of this week, I was playing on this kind of Christian worship, but super cool and vibey kind of thing. I expected it to be kind of cheesy, to be honest. But it was not. And the girl was awesome. Her story was cool. She's a great singer, but I played bass on the session. That's what Paul asked me to do. And I came in and I've just learned how to adapt. I mean, that's kind of what session musicians do. And, you have to learn how to walk into a scenario like where you literally have not heard the song in your life and you learn it real quick and you start recording,
Yeah.
So that's what I've done over the years, just being a fan of so many kinds of music. And I wanted to learn all of them, and not for the reason of like joining a metal band one day or whatever. I just love that music. And I was like, this song's great. I want to learn it on guitar. So I think I naturally, just with love of music, learned how to play different types of music, and I just naturally learned how to adapt. I never set out to do it. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you have, skill and talent that comes with that, and, I'm sure lots of that just kind of comes easy to you. But, I mean, you've also put in a lot of time, and, you've done so much writing, and so that's all part of it too, right? It's not like it just, I mean, there is natural talent, but it also takes a lot of time and effort, and
of course, for sure. I mean, I definitely think I got the gene from my dad, and like, there are a fair amount of musicians in my family. Like I mentioned, my cousin who worked for Tooth and Nail, he was in a band called Javelina, back in the day on Tooth and Nail, and he took a break from music for a long time, but he still does it now. He's in this awesome band you should check out called War Girl.
Cool. Yeah.
They're this rad female fronted band from Long Beach, California. And, my cousin Matt, who was in Javelina, he's in that band now, and they're awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I'll definitely check that out. Yeah. So you mentioned a bit before about Relient K, kind of a bit of that crossover. So I feel like at this point, your resume just says, I only join prominent bands. And,
it wasn't on purpose, man. Literally at no point did I seek any of it out. Like, it's just, again, like you just, if you're in music and, playing in bands, whether it's local or national or whatever, I think an important thing to do, and I think this was just part of my personality, is you just, you maintain relationships.
Yeah.
Become friends with people on the road. And I'm still like, I don't talk to them every day, but like, I can still reach out to any of the dudes from Goaty Hook and say, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" And it's great, I've always tried to maintain relationships as best I could, and of course, you grow apart because people get older, they have families, and move to different states and stuff like that, and whatever. But that's just kind of always what I've done, and I think that's just natural with just. I don't know. That's my personality.
Yeah.
So I never sought out like I need to join an established band.
Yeah. No, that was more just kind of poking fun. I mean, that's awesome for you, right? Like you've put in so much time. Like it makes sense you would join another band that, was already at a place where they could just bring in a guy like you that had lots of, abilities, and you can just kind of plug in right away instead of needing, like a bunch of practice or getting used to the band or whatever. And
I mean, dude, a lot of it's right place, right time. I mean, I just happened, Supertones broke up. I moved back to Nashville. Demon Hunter was part-time. I needed to pay my bills because my studio wasn't doing well. So I went and teched for Relient K because we were friends. I was just in the right place, right time when Dave decided to quit the band, and so it worked out.
Yeah. So not only did you kind of shift back to, punk, pop punk, but you went back to drumming. So how did you kind of, I know I've kind of asked us about adjusting to it, and, you make it sound like it was pretty natural, but that's still, that was a number of years between drumming for the Dingees and then now drumming for Relient K. How was that coming in, having to learn, they had, a good handful of albums by that point, and
right, yeah.
And,
well, I was very familiar with their music just because we toured together, and just being their friend. Like I especially loved, the Two Lefts record and the record.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's funny is before I joined the band, I actually played on the part of Five Score and 7 Years ago.
Okay, I love that album.
Yeah, so if you listen to the last song, Deathbed, there's the whole main song happens, and then there's the part where John Foreman from Switchfoot sings. Any drums after that is me.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
Because they thought the song was done, and then I got a call from, I think, Matt Hoops or Mark Townsend maybe, saying, hey, we want to add this drum part on the end, but we're on the road. They were already doing some shows or touring or something. And so I went down to Mark's studio with my drums, and I recorded the end of that song, and that's what's on the record.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I played on a record before I was in the band.
Yeah. Did that seem like a refreshing change going back to drums?
A bit. I mean, I never really stopped playing. I would always play in like my downtime, and
right.
Even in the Supertones, I mean, most of our demos, I was playing drums because our drummer lived in California.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd either use a really cheesy drum machine, or I would just mic up 2 mics on my kit back then. So I was still playing drums a lot just at home, so I wouldn't lose my chops or whatever. So I was kind of ready to go right when they asked me to audition. So they gave me a couple songs like specifically to learn, and I went and played them. And I actually, in the middle of one of the songs, totally dropped a stick, like just bonehead move.
Yeah. Oh, classic.
So I was kind of nervous. I was like, I didn't think I was going to be able to be in a band again that did well like the Supertones, and then so when that happened, I was kind of like, oh man, this could be another 5 or 6 years of my life.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't think the audition went that great, but they ended up choosing me. So, yay.
Yeah. So that album that you joined in on, it's called Forget and Not Slow Down. That kind of sees the band, kind of continuing to shift their sound from, the pop punk to a bit more of a rock, kind of indie rock feel. Did you have any part in the writing on this album? How did that, what was that like coming in, knowing their discography, and was that a conscious kind of shift for them, or was that just a natural progression for them?
Well, technically I was on recording before that, the Bird and the B-sides.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right.
So that whole first half of that kind of collection was all new songs.
Okay.
So that was my first like intro into the band. But for Forget Not So Down, I mean, Thiessen is the primary songwriter in that band. There's no debating that, I would say he's like 90% the writer, maybe 95%.
Yeah.
So again, back to my, lessons I learned from Steve Kravac, I kind of just come in and fill in the gaps of what he's doing. It's like finding the right drum beat to go with his vocal part or with Hoops' guitar part or whatever. And I guess if anything on that record, maybe I helped more with like some arrangement stuff, some different feel stuff, hey, on this, I'm trying to think of a song off the top of my head. Like, okay, there's a song there called Sahara. And the whole bridge section was supposed to be like kind of halftime breakdown kind of feel. And when we were rehearsing it one day at a rehearsal studio in Nashville, I basically went like quarter time. I went half of halftime.
Yeah.
To where it was like really slow, and all of a sudden it just felt good, and that became this amazing part live, and kids would go crazy, and it was just this little thing that I did. I didn't consider what it would sound like live or anything, or how people would react to it. But so I would do little things like that and just come up with different suggestions. And Thiessen was a fun guy to write drum parts to, because even though I play very, very simple and kind of tamed, there's a lot of times where like my kick drum pattern would be his vocal part,
Okay.
Rather than just doing a doom ga doom ga
Right.
the whole time. I would change the kick drum part to match his vocal. Like there's one on the Bird and the B-sides called what's it called? The Lining is Silver, and the verse, my kick drum is basically just emulating what Matt's singing.
Let's go back and listen to that.
Yeah, so to me, it kind of just gave it like a different feel rather than just doing the same straight drum beat all the time, And those are little simple changes that I kind of learned from Steve Kravac back, 15 years before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, no, it was super fun. So I wasn't like a big writer in the band, which was a little different for me because I'm used to the Supertones where, me and Matt wrote pretty much everything. But I also went into it, Relient K, respecting what they have already established for for at that point 4 or 5 records.
Yeah.
So I wasn't about to come in there and to basically just be like, well, I'm writing this and that. It's like I'm entering their world now. So I need to be respectful of that and kind of find my place. And I found it pretty quick, and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Were they still touring full time when this album came out? Like, what did that album cycle bring for the band?
For which one? For Get Not Slow Down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were pretty constantly touring until in 2012 was probably the last year. Well, it was last year I fully toured with them, but I think that was probably our lightest year of touring.
Okay.
I mean, the first year I joined the band, we did a bunch of fly date shows, and then we did 8 weeks of Warped Tour. Then we did a full 8-week fall tour. Yeah, we were usually almost every year was usually a big fall tour, a big spring tour, and then summer festivals, unless we were doing a Warped Tour.
Right. Do you remember what some of those tours were? Like, what would be some of the standout ones from then? I mean, obviously, Warped Tour would have been an awesome one. Had you ever done Warped Tour before with any other band?
No.
Okay.
No, my first time was 2008 with the band, and then we did it again in 2011. Warped Tour is super fun. I had a ton of friends in other bands that were just like texting me like, dude, you're going to hate it. It's so hot every day. It's just noisy every day. You're sweaty. You only play for 30 minutes, so the rest of the day is super boring. And I was just like, oh, crap, I'm not looking forward to this. And literally by the end of the first day, I was like, this is awesome. I loved it. I had a blast. Because again, I'm like Mr. Social Butterfly. I'm like walking around meeting other bands, and, we were on a stage that would kind of be split in half with another stage. And so, we're meeting all the bands that are playing the same stage as us, and, just becoming friends with people. And, and there's even people from Warped Tour in 2008 that I'm still friends with just because, what else am I going to do? I'm in the middle of a parking lot for, the next 24 hours. Like I need to, sometimes you need a break from your own tour bus. So you go hang out on someone else's bus. And so, yeah, I had a great time on Warped Tour, there was days that were hot and miserable for sure. Like playing in 108-degree weather outdoors.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
With the sun on you. It's awful. But, no, I had a great time doing that. Those were fun tours. And then, I'd say one of the most fun, anytime that House of Heroes was out with us was always a good time.
Oh yeah, they were a cool band.
Great band. Love those dudes. Still friends with those guys today. And them or Sherwood. Nate Henry's a close friend of mine. Up until about, I guess it's been about a year and a half. He was literally my neighbor. Lived 3 houses down from me.
Oh, cool.
He moved to Nashville probably almost 10 years ago, and bought a house on my street. And so we've gotten really close over the years. And so me and Nate making fire pits all the time, talking about conspiracy theories and Bigfoot and stuff. It was super fun. But, yeah,
that's cool. So you've at this point again, you're joining bands that are, they already have lots of albums out, whether it was Supertones or Demon Hunter or Relient K. How do you approach playing other people's songs? Like, even especially, I know guitar, you kind of have to stick to it a bit more, but with drums, would you just play the parts that were already there, or did you feel kind of you had the freedom to play around a bit, or what was that like?
It always started like so like Dave Douglas's drum parts, for instance. I mean, I love Dave to death. We were already friends back then. He called me when I joined the band and was so happy for me, and I'm still friends with Dave. He's one of the sweetest dudes in the world.
Yeah, right on.
But yeah, going into his parts, like, of course, right off the bat, I'm playing them pretty much verbatim what he's doing, and then once you get comfortable enough with the songs, you can kind of change up a few things, but I never changed like key parts. If there was like a specific drum part that was crucial to the song, like, okay, that's part of the whole feel of this section of the song, like I wouldn't change that, know. There's like I'm trying to think of a specific one for his drumming. So like the first track off of the one I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah.
That there's that whole drum intro, right? That whole thing. I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
I mean that's
of course.
You know what I mean? That's like the first thing you hear in the song, and if anything, I'd be changing just little drum fills and stuff. But yeah, the main heart and soul of whatever drum parts there were, like I would do those justice and honor those, and just change up little inflections here and there, little drum fills or just little accents on things and stuff like that. Plus, Dave wrote awesome drum parts. They were so much fun to play.
Yeah, he was a great
He's
drummer.
a great drummer, awesome drummer, and we like I said, like we've hung out so many times over the years, and he just had such good drum parts to play, like. Especially in the middle of a show when you're just full of adrenaline and like every part just seems effortless because you're, blood's flowing and stuff. I always loved playing his drum parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I always loved watching. I did see them. I saw them at would have been Cornerstone 2002. Yeah, I think that was the only time I saw them live. But yeah, I always loved his style, and even sometimes the way he set up his cymbals. And I remember being sad hearing that he wasn't with the band anymore. But his I felt like his style really complemented kind of the more kind of punk albums. Whereas I'm sure it would have been fine later on too, but I don't know, just kind of a random thought there. But
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of moving on here a bit. I just want to briefly touch on your time in Kings of Leon. I really don't know
a whole different world.
Yeah, and I really don't know a whole lot about that band, but I'm always intrigued and interested when I see kind of scene people getting to join bigger bands. There's a few other guys where that's happened. And are you familiar with the band City and Color?
I've heard of the band, yes.
Okay, so it's like a guy from that band Alexis on Fire, another Canadian band, and so he started this whole kind of acoustic thing, and he's a huge artist now, like especially in Canada, and so. But a guy that used to play in a hardcore band with the band I was in, he's now playing. Kind of auxiliary instruments with him or steel guitar, and it's just always cool to see. And Dallas Green, who is City and Color, he comes from that punk background too, but now that he's really kind of exploded in the mainstream, and he had that side project with Pink. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was called like She and Him or something, or maybe that's another one. But
I think She and Him is isn't that Zooey Deschanel's?
Okay,
band?
yes, it's something similar to that. It's the two words,
sure.
But they played on Jimmy Kimmel and the Ellen Show,
awesome.
and my buddies there, playing in the background. So it's just always cool to
that stuff happens
when they get those opportunities. So I'm assuming that was kind of you started like teching for them, or just an opportunity came up, or
I mean it was very similar to like the Relient K thing. I was kind of already there, and just to clarify, I was never in. This is a misconception sometimes with bigger bands like that,
right?
For the most part, it's just those four dudes, three brothers and their cousin. If there's anybody else on stage, like they're just it's business. You're a hired gun. You're not in the band. You're not writing. You're not recording. You're literally there just to play parts live, and that's it. You know what I mean? No more, no less. And that's the role, and that's what I've kind of been doing since then, or at least trying to. It's a tough business, like I said earlier, but yeah, I mean, I after Relient K, like I had done a couple teching tours. I went out and teched for that band Cold War Kids. I was out with them for a few months, and then a buddy of mine was the auxiliary musician for Kings of Leon that I'd known for a long time. This guy Chris Coleman, And I hit him up just asking, hey, man, keep your ear open. I'm looking for, an artist to play for, auxiliary, whatever. And he was like, actually, if you're into teching, like, I need a tech. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it at first, but because my heart's in playing, I've never really been a tech other than teching for Relient K a little bit, but I know how to tech because I've always worked on my own guitars and stuff. But and so I just decided, what, screw it. Like, this isn't what I want to do for a living, but they're a huge band, and I'll get to literally see the world. Like, they play in Europe and the UK and all over the world all the time. And so I decided to do it, and they needed a tech on very short notice. And 3 days after I got the phone call, 3 days after I got home from being gone for 6 weeks with Cold War kids, 3 days later I was on a flight to Germany.
Wow.
To go tech for Kings of Leon. Like, sight unseen, hadn't met anybody in the band. I didn't know anybody but the one dude I was teching for. So that's one of those things, about switching jobs so much in a matter of a year. I mean, in that same year, in January, I was out teching for John Foreman from Switchfoot, and then for the next couple months, I was teching for Cold War Kids, and then 3 days after that, I'm in Germany teching for Kings of Leon. It's like, and starting a whole new job where you're getting to know new people. Like, I felt like the total loner. Like, I walked in, I was just like, I don't know anybody here, and there's this massive operation happening, and like, they're only playing arenas. I mean, this is bigger than anything I've ever dealt with, So it was a huge learning curve, and I got thrown straight in the deep end of the pool. But it worked out great. And then fast forward, like, probably about a year and a half, and Chris, who I was teching for, the auxiliary player, he said, hey, I'm going to be getting off the road. My wife and I are pregnant with our first kid. We're going to start a family, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to travel anymore. And so he recommended to the guys in Kings, hey, and I already kind of knew the dudes at this point and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, you should have Ethan do it. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He can cover all the parts, no problem, blah, blah, blah. And so I basically rehearsed all the songs in hotel rooms while we were on tour. And he left basically in the middle of a tour. There was a week break, and he left during that week. And I pretty much had only time in my hotel rooms to learn. I kind of knew all the songs anyways, because I'm listening to them every single night as a tech,
Yeah.
And I'm watching, Chris play all the parts. So, I mean, it wasn't hard to figure out, but it's also Kings of Leon. It's like this massive band. And so, yeah, I literally started in the middle of a tour, and I didn't know I was playing the first show I did until the day of.
Wow.
Because they decided they wanted me to play a show with Chris still there, so he could kind of like tell the guys, yeah, he did great. Right. You're in good hands kind of thing, I guess. So, yeah, it was literally like one day, I think it was in Charlotte, I had, set up all the stuff for Chris, and the rest of the guys, all the other techs are set up all their stuff. And the band comes in to sound check, and they finish, they're about to start sound checking, I'm sorry. And Nathan, the drummer, walks over. He said, hey, how you feeling about the songs? I was like, oh, man, feeling pretty good, man. I think I got them all down, been rehearsing them a bunch. He goes, cool, you're playing tonight. That's how I found out.
Yeah, wow.
And so I was like, okay. And so he's like, all right, get up there. Let's sound check a couple songs. Sound checked them. All the guys were like, cool, man. Sounds great. See you tonight. And I was like, okay. And so, and then that was the first time in a long time, very long time, that I was a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of, you've adapted to a lot of different circumstances and styles and stuff, but this is, it's a whole different world, like you said, of the crew that's working with them, the people that are coming, the venues, and.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good part of that day was, at this point, I've already gotten really close to the other crew guys, especially a dude named Nacho, he's also the cousin of all the guys in the band, and he's like their main tech, been there since day one kind of thing. And him and Jay, the old bass tech, and a couple other people I was very close to at this point and hanging with every day. So I had like this cheering squad behind me, They're like, dude, helps. You're playing tonight, like you're gonna kill it. I think it was just the size of the band that, and it was the biggest thing that I'd ever done. And I was kind of surprised. I was a little nervous because I hadn't been that kind of nervous since I mean, the only other time I was that nervous that I could remember at the time was when Relient K got to play the Tonight Show, and I was super nervous about that.
Oh, right on.
But other than that, like I just got, I got used to it, and you just don't get nervous anymore. It just goes away, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it came back, and what's funny about this entire conversation is I remember starting the set that night in Charlotte, and I had a friend that was at the show named Dusty Redmond, who played in the Almost. And,
oh yeah.
Beloved, but him and his wife came to the show. And I remember standing on stage playing these parts, and I'm kind of in the back next to the drummer. I'm not like, again, I'm an auxiliary guy.
Yeah.
No one gives a crap who I am at all. And that was great about that job, was that nobody cared about me. I could literally walk into the crowd after the show and nobody would even bat an eye to me because I'm not in Kings of Leon. But I remember sometime in the middle of the set, I remember kind of looking out at the crowd thinking, like, this is awesome. And one of the first thoughts that popped in my head, I thought to myself, man, I used to be in the Dingees.
Yeah. You didn't wear a Dingees shirt for any of the shows? Just to see
definitely did not. It was just this like weird, everything kind of came rushing back. Like, it's almost like, the past version of, your life flashing before your eyes kind of thing.
Right. Everything
in my past just kind of flew through my head as I was up there doing that, thinking like, man, how on earth did I get here? And again, it all goes back to just relationships. I mean, that's literally how I've gotten almost every opportunity I've done. It's just, someone who needs something, or someone who knows someone that needs a musician or whatever. And that's how even last year I did a tour with that band Need to Breathe as an auxiliary musician.
Yeah.
Again, not in the band. I'm just an aux guy on stage, just playing a couple different instruments. And that was another word of mouth thing. Friend of a friend was like, hey, I know a guy looking to get on the road, and they needed an auxiliary guy for this 3-leg tour. And I was like, and I got on the road with them, and it was awesome,
Yeah, man, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. I love hearing, it's such a drastic shift, but it just comes with really cool experiences, and just goes to show you put your heart into it, you work hard, and you're willing to kind of do what it takes, and so
yeah, man, and that's in any profession too. I mean, if you're a nurse and things aren't working out at this hospital you're working at, but you still have a passion for nursing, guess what? You're going to go find another hospital.
Yeah.
Same thing with you're a lawyer, and same thing with a law firm or whatever. It's in any profession. If you have a true passion for it, and you feel like that's your calling and that's what you should be doing, you're going to keep doing it no matter what obstacle gets in the way.
Yeah, for sure. Sweet. Well, the last project I want to touch on is your own solo work.
The biggest one.
Yeah. Well, that's what's cool about this is you can go play in a big band like this, but like you said, lots. You're super creative. You got all these ideas. Like, you're not going to wait to put those into maybe a certain band you're waiting to join or whatever. Like, you're just going to keep doing it. And so I wanted to talk about the last album you put out, Let It Burn, in 2018. I was really excited when I saw that you were doing a fundraising initiative for this album, and I've listened to this album a ton since, and I love it.
Oh, cool.
I think it's really uniquely you, and I think it's a great fit for your style musically. What were some of the main kind of inspirations for this album, and why this style specifically?
It wasn't like a rehash the past, let's do a ska reggae kind of record. Because in my mind, it's nothing like the Supertones. Even,
yeah, for sure.
It's not like a. I definitely drew all my influences from like old school ska and reggae, even though I kind of modernized it in my own way, I guess. But there's hardly any distorted guitars on the record or overdriven guitars. Maybe on a couple little parts, but I was just going for vibe on it. I wanted Paul Moak, who I do a lot of session work with. He did all the keys. I did it at his studio. He produced it and stuff, but he did all the keys on it minus one song, and I played all the drums, bass, guitar, and percussion, and what else did I play? Melodica. It was just, I don't know. I knew that I started writing a lot of those songs as like punk rock songs, because no matter what, the songs I write start usually on an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar, and like not plugged in, just sitting in a hotel room or at home.
Yeah.
and they kind of start as like, I'm just kind of strumming and singing melodies and stuff like that. And then I had one or two that I just, for fun, one day when I was on tour, I opened up Logic and like programmed the drum beat, and I started playing it like a reggae song. I'm like, man, that feels really good. I haven't really written that kind of stuff in a long time, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just felt right. And it was literally that moment that I was like, I'm just going to make a reggae record, with maybe a couple like old school traditional kind of ska songs on it. And that was kind of what I set out to do. And originally it was going to be an EP, because I'd only put out EPs before that. I put out 3 EPs prior to that. And then Paul Moak, my producer for that record, he encouraged me to just keep writing. He's like, dude, there's no time frame. Just keep writing. Let's make a full length. And I was like, okay. He's like, how are we going to pay for this? And I was like, I have no idea. And so I started talking to a few friends that, that have done crowdfunding things, through Kickstarter. And I actually started it with Pledge Music.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you've heard anything about what happened to Pledge Music in the last couple of years, it's freaking terrible.
Oh,
the owners of Pledge Music, I can't remember if it was 2 guys or maybe 1, just basically just took people for a lot of money.
Wow.
And Pledge Music is no more. But I did the whole sign up process, and originally set my goal at like, I think I put $5,000. And I knew that wasn't going to be enough, but I was hoping I'd go over it.
Yeah.
And I got an email back from the people at Pledge saying, hey, based off of your social media BS, all your numbers, we feel like your goal is too high. And so they recommended 3,000. And so
really?
then
wow.
Right. So this is, get this. So I redid everything. I altered, my goal amount, and I put it at 3,000, which was their recommendation. I resubmit everything. I get an email back 2 weeks later. I had to email them and say, hey, I still haven't gotten approved based on your recommendations. What's up? And they wrote me back and said, oh, we're sorry. We're not going to approve you because we don't feel that you can benefit us, basically. It was this weird thing. So I basically got denied. And and I spent about a total of 3 weeks like working on this stuff and getting the Pledge Music thing just right, and all that, for them just to say like, we don't think that you would do well on Pledge Music.
Yeah.
Even though they recommended half the information that I put in there. It was so ridiculous. And honestly, man, I was really discouraged. I was like, this sucks. Like, I just felt like, wow, shoot, what am I going to do? And so then I ended up talking to Nate Henry from Sherwood, who at the time was my neighbor. And sitting around a fire pit one night, and he had already done a couple Kickstarters for a couple different projects. And so I just talked to him, got his advice, and he was like, man, Kickstarter's pretty straightforward, man. You just set an amount. If you don't hit it, you don't get the money. If you go over, then great. And so I decided to aim high, and I put it at $7,000. And then I think I ended up getting up to almost 11,000.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which blew me away. But I mean, at this point, this is, 2018. At this point, I'm about 4 years out of Relient K, and I've just been on the road with Kings of Leon. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, no, I hope I make this goal, maybe, but I'm thinking like, I don't know if people really remember me now, not that I was this like popular musician, but
but you've been around forever. I think you have lots of people like myself that have grown with you, like.
Sure. I guess I didn't see it that way. I was just kind of like, I'm just like a normal dude now trying to make a record. I didn't, really consider how many years I've been doing this total. I just kind of thought like, hopefully, I can help fund this record. And I hit the goal in less than 24 hours.
Yeah,
or no, sorry, less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. And then it slowly grew from there. I can't remember how long I set it for, like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something, 3 weeks. But yeah, man. So that happened. And then I was able to, I could have recorded it at home. It would have sounded good, but I knew I wanted to work at my buddy Paul's studio, which, if anyone follows me on Instagram, you'll occasionally see photos from that studio, and it's just the most amazing place. I wish I could record there every single day, but, and it worked out great. I had a bunch of friends come in and do little guest things on the record. And, it was just a blast, man, because it was just me and Paul, his engineer and his assistant, and that was it, you know. And then friends would stop by, like, but it was mainly, you know, me just recording everything, and then Paul would add keys, and then towards the end, I had horn players come in, which, you know, Dan and Brett from the Supertones played on it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then Liam, who is also one of the auxiliary guys for Kings of Leon, he played sax on it. So it was just,
rad.
you know, again, back to relationships, man.
Yeah.
You maintain them, you call in favors, and people help you out, you know?
Yeah. Well, it turned out so good. It's a great sounding record. It's, you know, an album that you can kind of put on, whether it's in the background, you know, cleaning the house or something, or I love listening to it while I'm driving. Like, it's a really cool driving album. You know, maybe if you've been, you know, driving for 5-6 hours and you just kind of need something to kind of just keep you going. And
right, yeah.
Yeah, like it's super catchy, but it's just got this vibe to it where, you know, whether you're hanging around by a fire or whatever it is. So for people that haven't heard it, please go check it out. It's a really quality album, especially if you're fans of any of Ethan's previous work. So go and do that.
It's on all the streaming platforms. And actually, if I were to plug anywhere to go get it, if you want to stream it on Spotify, that's fine. But if you want to actually like download it, I always recommend Bandcamp because and I've got a ton of other stuff on there too, like my other EPs, random cover songs, whatever. But everything on my Bandcamp page is name your price. So
perfect.
Someone can grab my record for $1 or for $20, whatever you want, you know.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to take up much more of your time here. This is it's been a while, but I just wanted to end by.
I can talk.
Oh no, I love it. I'm all about this. So, I had asked you to just briefly share about 3 albums that were really influential on you. I love hearing this, and I know other listeners love hearing kind of what influences, you know, the musician that you love, and so. Why don't you just share some of those albums and maybe just something briefly about it, why it has maybe stood the test of time or why it keeps you coming back or kind of how it shaped you as a musician? Yeah.
Shoot, well, I emailed them to you in no particular order, but or was I even supposed to send those to you, or is this just for you? You wanted me to have it prepared?
I was just asking you for this, so that's fine. You send it to me, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I got confused. Sorry. Yeah, so in no particular order, The Clash, London Calling. That was a record that a band that I kind of discovered through a friend in high school, early high school, and I'd already gotten into like more modern punk rock bands like Rancid and Green Day and MXPX and stuff, but I never really went back in time and started discovering bands that they were influenced by and what bands that band was influenced by. Because to me, that's one of the best ways to discover new music is find your favorite band and find out who they're influenced by and go back in time and find the root of why your favorite band exists,
Right.
But yeah, there was just something special about London Calling. It's, arguably their most well-known record. And there's just so many styles of music on it. There's ska songs, there's reggae songs, there's punk songs, there's somewhat dancey kind of song. It's just a very eclectic record. And I encourage anybody who's into really any kind of music. You'll probably know a couple songs from the record, but it's such a fantastic album. And the Clash is, they're still one of my favorite. They're them and Metallica are my 2 favorite bands of all time.
Cool.
And then speaking of Metallica, Master of Puppets, their 3rd album, Cliff Burton's last record. And it's a heavy metal masterpiece. Fun fact, it is the only thrash metal album that is in the Library of Congress.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
I know way too many Metallica facts because I host a Metallica podcast.
Right, yeah.
And we've done like 181 episodes. But
oh, that's crazy.
But yeah, that record early on when I was first starting to play guitar, before I even got into punk or knew what punk and like ska and reggae was, I discovered Metallica, in the late 80s. I remember seeing the One video, which is from Injustice for All. But yeah, I remember getting that and then, okay, this is cool. Like, this is scary and this is different and I want to learn these guitar parts. What other kind of music do they have? What does this band have out there? And then I went to, at the time, it was a music store called Sam Goody. And I went to the M's and heavy metal and found Master of Puppets. And the cover just looks so badass and just scary and whatever. And so yeah, we got that, and that record just changed my life. Like there was thrash stuff, there was ballad kind of stuff, the clean guitar tone stuff. And I think as a guitar player, what drew me to it, there was actually parts in the record that I could play and I could learn, and some other stuff is so fast, especially back then. It was, as a young guitar player, I couldn't play that fast yet, but, a song like Sanitarium off Master of Puppets is, the rhythm part, it's like, okay, I can play that, and it sounds like the record. It was so exciting, and only encouraged me more to keep learning guitar and getting better. And then the third one is Bob Marley's Exodus. Around the time I was getting into punk rock and stuff, I got into reggae because they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of worlds, but yeah, it was actually, playing guitar in my high school group at church, and, normally it's just kind of like, kind of cheesy, worship songs on Sunday morning. And we had this music leader that came in, and he wasn't Jamaican. I think he might be half Jamaican. I can't remember. It's been a long time, but he was actually, he lived in Jamaica for a long time. And he wanted to play Three Little Birds on like the Sunday morning service or whatever. And he was the first person to show me how to do like the kind of reggae rhythm on guitar.
Yeah.
Like the ching 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 ching, and it's something it's something that a lot of people, especially guitar players, will be like, "Oh, that's so easy." But it's not. I mean, yeah, you can do that, but the feel of reggae is to me just as complex as the technicalities of metal. It has to be right. It has to have the right feel. And it took me forever to really lock that in. And I'm still nowhere near what Bob Marley and the Wailers could do. They also probably smoked 10 pounds of weed before they went on stage, so that's going to help with your backbeat. But yeah, man, that was my introduction, and I was just kind of like, wow, what is this music, and I just got obsessed, and so that song's off the record Exodus, which it's kind of his, it's one of his most acclaimed records. It has the song Exodus on there, and yeah, if you don't listen to reggae, you really should. At the very least, start with Bob Marley. I know that a lot of people think he's kind of like of course you're going to say Bob Marley because he's kind of like the king of reggae, but
right,
I mean,
yeah.
But you know what? In the words of my friend John Davis, he's the Beatles of reggae. He just wrote the best songs. There's no question. I mean, every one of his records is good. I think he put out like 13 records or something, and all of them are good. And it's just, it's good music to put on, just kind of in the background, or if you want to just like, kind of chill out for the night and don't want to have the TV on, just put a reggae record on, man. It's especially like 70s reggae, man. That stuff will just, it's good for your soul.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, thanks so much for sharing, so much stuff. This has been a big joy for me getting to finally talk with you and just kind of nerd out on all the different bands you played in. And I know there's lots of other ones too, which maybe we can get to a different
little
time.
Side things one day.
Yeah, but thanks so much for taking the time to do this and just sharing your heart and stuff and your experience. Man. And yeah, it's been awesome. I know there'll be lots of listeners that will enjoy getting to hear this. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
Hey man, my pleasure. And yeah, keep up the good work, dude. You got a good podcast going.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man.
All right. See ya.
All right. Was that fake goodbye? Oh, it really is. You really hung up on me. I thought that was a fake goodbye. All right. I'm going to bounce this out again and send it to you. Cut this out. Cut this out.
And instead of that, you became a leg breaker. Some cheap second-rate loan shark.
It's a living?
It's a waste of life.